This is Global Order. I'm Hindol Sengupta. I'm absolutely delighted that Ram Madhavji has joined us in conversation today. Ram Madhavji is somebody who's been a mentor figure to me for a very long time, and he's been a supporter in many things that I've done. And of course, of the many books he's written, this is the latest one. I want to show it, The New World, 21st Century Global Order and India. This is his latest book. I'm going to talk to Ram Madhavji today on a whole range of issues, especially something that he's been writing a lot about, national conservatism in a new world order. Ram Madhavji, welcome.
Thank you so much, Hindol. Thank you for having me.
Namaskar. I want to begin by asking you, there's a wonderful chapter in your book where you talk about, with all the different, methodologies through which the world is going through and changing into a new world order, the role of national conservatism. I want to begin from that point today. Talk to me a little bit about how you see, because once again, socialism told us this, various other sort of isms told us this. And now in the AI age, technologists tell us that nationalism will become outdated, borders don't matter. And the more we hear that, the more, in fact, on the ground, borders seem to matter. Tell me how you see this.
Thank you, Hindol, first of all, for having this wonderful conversation on my new book, The New World. Look, the book deals with geostrategy, geopolitics, and geoeconomics. But one of the most important chapters in the book also deals with the sociological changes that are going to take place. That includes issues that you have raised just now, like how the conservative ideas of nationalism, religion, family, national sovereignty, meaning protection of borders, etc., will come back as very important issues for nations and peoples across the world. Two very important sociological changes that I have noticed in this new century or in this new order will be, one is this return to conservatism. Conservatism in a very loose sense, I'm using that word, which essentially says that from the fad of globalism, which dominated the last century, at least the second half of the last century, countries are now turning back to their national identities. They want to proudly proclaim their identities. They want to be proud nationalists. Some don't want to use the word nationalism. They want to use patriotism, but it is one and the same. That is one very important feature that we see. And by extension, now those societies want to assert their cultural identities, including their belief in God. God I'm using in singular because I'm talking about Europe essentially. They are monotheistic religions. So they talk about God. Nevertheless, this is their fight against the liberals who refuse the very identity of God and religion. But these countries are now turning to their religion, their identity, their gods, and they are returning to commitment to family system. Of course, national sovereignty is a very, very important issue with many countries today, and patriotism, proudly proclaiming their country's interests and standing up for the interests of their countries. That is now returning in many countries. That I called as return of conservatism. More or less, several of those issues are identical and we very easily connect with those issues. But very interestingly, at the same time, while the countries from a liberal order or a middle order are turning to conservatism and to the right of the spectrum, one section is drastically moving to the left also. The left is becoming radical left. They are also getting into identity issues, but micro identity issues. They are now talking about issues which we categorize as wokeism, meaning rejecting all the existing institutions, all the existing identities, and seeking to create new and very microscopically small identities. So these two sociological factors that will dominate the sociological landscape societal landscape in this century are, I identify them as two very important features of the new world.
Let's talk a little bit about where that takes us, especially at a time when, just before I came into this interview, I was looking at certain statements made by the French Parliament about where Europe's future is. Of course, we know what's going on in the United States. From an Indian vantage point, when we look at such a disorderly world, so to speak, and a moment of great transition, how do you think India, in a sense, is looking at this world? And of course, India has made it a point to say again and again that we stand for ourselves. We don't belong in any grouping per se. But certainly, as we look at this chaotic world, where do you think we see our place?
This chaos that you see today, what some people describe as, emerging or new global disorder. This disorder is the phase of transition. It is during the phase of transition that we are seeing this disorder. But India has to be very carefully watching these developments, because these are all symptomatic of a very different world that is going to, emerge out of all this chaos. Now, for example, as we discussed, nationalism will definitely come back, with utmost vigor now. It has already happened in many European countries. Even you see what is happening in America, making America great again. MAGA is nothing but their version of nationalism. They call it patriotism, but nonetheless, that is the reality there. So country after country turning inwards, trying to protect its national identities and national interests will be the order of the day. But remember, the challenge to nationalism in the last century was from liberalism, which was more globalist, more open. It saw nationalism as parochial and narrow. But this time, this challenge to nationalism is coming from wokeism, which not only wants to attack political national identities, it also wants to attack your cultural identities, your civilizational identities. For example, it refuses the institution of to identify the institution of family. Not just family, it goes to the extent of today saying that even gender cannot be recognized. You can't identify yourself as a particular gender. So forget about your nation, your culture, even your gender is going to be questioned now. So anybody, in fact, in Europe, it is now a reality that many institutions, when they admit children, they tell the parents that you fill up all the columns of the application form, but not the gender column. Because the gender column will be filled up by that student when he or she turns 14. They will decide whether they want to continue as boy or as a boy or as a girl. I mean, it sounds very, very, very crazy for all of us, but that is the reality today. So nations have to guard themselves against this kind of a wave of wokeism, which champions all the anarchist causes, which goes after your history, your civilization, your culture, your traditions, your customs. So the new fight that the national identities have to fight, are actually fighting in the West, is against this adversary, which is in the form of wokeism. So India has to carefully observe these developments, although they don't seem to have entered our country in a big way as of today. But if we are a little, less careful, in no time, these ideas have the potential to enter our country also. Only good thing, let me just add one sentence here. In India today, is that India is today under the big influence of cultural and civilizational forces. I'm not just talking about the government of the day. Of course, the government of the day, basically subscribes to that cultural civilizational identity paradigm. But beyond the government, here there are forces. For example, take organizations like the RSS or many such organizations and individuals, even people like you, who subscribe to a cultural and civilizational value system that is at the grassroots in our country. I think that is one great protection we have from the onslaught of these forces.
I want to ask you, Ram Madhavji, nationalists and patriots have had many decades of trying to counter communism and socialism. Communism and socialism, which said national borders were not important, everything could be merged and so on and so forth. Now, today there is wokeism. In your opinion, having seen the long battle against communism in our own country, in India, which do you think is more dangerous? The communism of yesterday or the wokeism of today?
Where communism or socialism, or for that matter, classical liberalism, emphasized on borderless world. They wanted to create a globalist society, globalist value system, which they thought that the Western value system is the true globalist value system. So we should impose it on the entire world. That has been the effort in the last 75 years. Whereas today's wokeism, it is not globalist, it is actually individualist. It goes down to micro identities. There was a time when the left was fighting for the rights of certain probably disadvantaged or underprivileged sections. Today, left's fight, the radical extreme left's fight is not about those sections. They will stand up for the terrorists. Then they will stand up for the smaller minority groups, like maybe gays. I'm not saying that is right or wrong. I'm not getting into the debate. But the whole fight is now about gay rights. For example, there was a time when the left used to champion the cause of women. Women's rights, women's lib. This used to be a big slogan with the leftist groups at one time. But today, extreme left, radical left fights for causes that are actually against the interest of women. Like, one of the causes they fought and championed and succeeded in USA was to get President Biden to sign a very first executive order in 2021 of allowing men to use women's toilets. Now tell me, is it really protecting the rights of women if men are allowed to enter into women's toilets? So today's woke is championing causes which are actually against those very causes which their forefathers were championing in the name of leftism. So it is a very micro-centric, very narrow-centric and very destructive kind of movement. In that sense, I consider wokeism is a much bigger threat than what we hitherto encountered in the form of socialism, communism or classical liberalism.
India is in a unique position because many of these battles are really Western battles. Like, we have not had many of these issues in our society. You look at even the transgender issue. These were all, in a sense, incorporated into the vastness of our social milieu. There was always space for everyone, everybody did their own thing, and yet there was a composite whole. But somehow in the West, this has become extremely hard political position, leading to great conflict, including violent conflict. How can we keep this away from our own country and indeed from Asia, because other Asian countries are worried about this too?
It's actually a very good point, Hindol. What India presents to the entire world today is not a black and white debate over these issues. It's actually a very mature way of handling all such diversities. As you very rightly said, we have dealt with these subjects, whether it is gay issues, same-sex issues, or how do you deal with various small and micro identities. We have already discussed these issues, debated at a very mature level thousands of years ago, and we have come to conclusion that each of these identities have a valid place in our social order. We have not rejected any such identities, but we tried to build certain overarching institutions so that these identities do not become destructive to the very order of the society and order of the nation. That brings me to a very important issue. We entertain all such diverse identities, whether it is transgender issues, that includes gays, lesbians, and several other groups today. All such issues, but we entertain them in a manner that would not be detrimental to the social order we build. Why I'm saying this is, this was this issue of same-sex marriages came up before our government also, and the matter went up to the Supreme Court. You may probably, I mean, I must point out that already in the world, about 40 countries have legalized same-sex marriages. Whereas in India, when the matter came up before the Supreme Court, our government took a very mature stand. It said, while the debate over same-sex relationship is a different matter, whether we can allow the institutionalized and very sacred institution of marriage to be linked to it is something that needs more discussion. Hence, government will not support it at this moment. So India is one of the very important countries in the world which said same-sex marriage cannot be accepted, because marriage in our social system is more than two people coming together. It has some kind of it's not just a social contract as it is understood in the West, in Europe and other places. It's a sacrament. It is for a higher purpose. It is for the continuity of human race. So in that sense, marriage sanctity that our culture and our civilization has handed down to us has been upheld by us, while not completely rejecting the other aspect of gender relations, which is, LGBTQ, you call relationships. In fact, on LGBTQ issue also, we must compliment the present government for coming out with a major amendment to Criminal Procedure Code, CRPC, by removing Section 377, which used to penalize the same-sex relationships. Same-sex relationship, whether it is right, wrong, is a different debate. And who should do what? Is it the job of the government to get into that issue, or it is societal and familial responsibility to discuss and do the needful? But can you penalize it? I mean, I know that just a police constable can walk into any boys' hostel or girls' hostel and pick up two people in the name of their having gay or lesbian relationship and put them in jail. So this government took the bold step of decriminalizing it. It's different from legalizing it. So when it came to marriage, same government said, no, marriage is an institution for social, social advancement, social progress. So there we cannot allow it. So we handled these issues very maturely. Unfortunately, West did not have that kind of a long history, first of all. Their whole history, they looked at everything from the prism of black and white. So they are having a lot of struggles.
I want to also talk to you a little bit about India's position in the world. From all counts, Ram Madhavji, this is going to be a difficult journey. We are already the fourth largest economy. We want to go and become the third largest economy. We want to get to $10 trillion. But in a fractured world, pressure is coming from all sides. You look at the Trump tariffs on one side. You look at Trump's comments on India-Pakistan on the other. You look at China, which has its own shenanigans. This is going to be a difficult journey. But of course, it's a journey we have to, fulfill for our own national destiny. How do you see this journey and the next decade ahead for India, and what India needs to do to get to, becoming one of the most, richest and powerful countries in the world?
So India has always had this ambition to rise as an important power in the world. But especially the kind of world we are entering into today, as you rightly described, it is more chaotic, more divided, I would say. Last world order was at least divided between two superpowers. It was a bipolar world order, one would say. There were countries like India which stayed out of both the poles, but they did not do anything. They called themselves non-aligned. They just stayed out of it. But today's world is not bipolar, although two important powers are there. US is there and China is there, but there are many middle powers rising. These are also very influential. You may recall when we were having that conflict with Pakistan, earlier, whenever we had a problem with Pakistan, we used to say that China was supporting Pakistan, which we said this time also. But this time we also talked about Turkey. What does it mean? Turkey also has emerged as a player in the Middle East. It's an important player. We may have a lot of issues with it. So today there are such middle powers. Russia is an important middle power. So are countries in ASEAN. So are countries like South Africa, Brazil. So we are in a world where two big powers and many middle powers will be dominating. Not only that, going beyond these political states as pillars of power, you have people like Elon Musk. You have people like George Soros. You have NGOs. And, please don't forget that those who are ruling Afghanistan today, the Taliban, we called them as terrorists until 2 years ago. Whom we called as ISIS terrorists until last year are today the rulers of Syria. So you are entering into a world where identities can change and which I called as heteropolar arrangement will emerge. That's what we are seeing. So India has to now tread very cautiously. The strategic autonomy policy that we adopted under Prime Minister Modi is the best way in the current scenario. We have to very diligently and very religiously adhere to it, even while many countries would pressurize us to join them. You probably have seen people in American think tanks writing about India and even calling India as an enemy because it is not supporting America. There will be lots of pressures. And Trump's one of the grudges he has against India was that why is India there in BRICS? Why India is not there only in Quad? So they want India now to openly side with this group or that group, but India has to tread this phase very cautiously. It's a transient phase. It will pass, but India has to maintain its strategic autonomy. And meanwhile, you said a very important thing. You see, becoming fourth or from fourth to third is not the story at all for me. I mean, it's of course a matter of pride for all of us, but to become fifth, you just have to cross $5.5 trillion. But India, if it were to really play a bigger role in the world, it must aim at least crossing $10 trillion mark. Otherwise, today, by the time we cross Germany and become third largest economy, maybe two years from now, China will be $22 trillion economy. USA will be some $28-30 trillion economy. I mean, we will be 1/5 of them. So India has to now really grow faster, economically. So focus for next 10 years only on economy. Build a strong economy for India. Give at least $6,500 per capita income to all Indians. Then I'm sure India will be able to navigate this world with more confidence and more effectively.
To bring you back to something you mentioned earlier, when you mentioned the RSS, a lot of people don't understand outside in the world how the RSS looks at the world and indeed looks at India's view of the world or Indian foreign policy and how India should behave in the world. A little more is understood today about RSS's view of economics, but not much about the view of the foreign policy angle or aspect of India. You've spent a lifetime as part of the RSS. You were the face of the RSS for the world for a long, long time, and still remain one of the most pivotal, people for the world inside the RSS. Talk to me a little bit about what your understanding is of how the RSS looks at the world and looks at India's role in the world.
As rightly said, I have spent almost 90% of my life in the RSS, right from my childhood. I've been a part of the RSS, lived as a pracharak for many decades now. I can tell you one thing. RSS has earmarked one very fundamental and very grassroots work for itself. It decided that my only job will be to impart a lot of patriotism, love for our country, not just patriotism, not in only political sense, love for our dharma, our culture, our religion. The Hindu pantheon of religions impart this great feeling of oneness or pride about our civilizational cultural identity. That's the only work that RSS decided to undertake. So RSS, in that sense, has done a fabulous job in creating that sense of, if I may use the word Hindu-ness. I'm not calling Hinduism or anything. Hindu-ness or Hindu-dom, for that matter, if you want to use. RSS has done phenomenal work in that area. So today, one may say that there are people who probably oppose RSS or don't understand RSS there, but we must not forget that millions and millions, not even millions, tens of millions of people understand RSS and they are a part of RSS today. Lot of people support RSS today, and that means the strength of the organization. But having said it, yes, once you are seeped in that school of thought, then you have to think about the foreign policy of the country, economy of the country based on that philosophy. That is what thousands of RSS inspired people, including, I would say, Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, all of them are doing. They drew that basic inspiration from the RSS, and they are now charting a good course for the country. So, what is RSS foreign policy? Just look at what Prime Minister Modi and his colleagues are doing, because they have the grounding in RSS. RSS did not have a separate foreign policy. Today, RSS is entering into its 100th year. They will be starting their centenary celebrations in October this year. That will give RSS an excellent opportunity to probably articulate its views on economy, its views on polity, its views on society, and its views on issues like including foreign policy, national security, and all. More in a more pronounced way, more prominently, because 100-year centenary gives a platform and opportunity for them, and it will definitely be done. But to understand RSS, one has to understand how an RSS leader or an RSS functionary acts in different walks of national life.
As we come towards the end of our conversation, Ram, I want to go back to your book. And one of the points that you make about the book, where at the very beginning of your book, for instance, you talk about America's difficult transition of imagination almost to a world where it isn't any longer the preeminent pole power. This is going to be a difficult transition, especially with the rise of China and now India and the middle powers, as you said. How do you see America's transition, and what kind of disruption would this transition create in the world, which we should be aware of?
So in the middle of the last century, when the Second World War had ended and the new global institutions, multilateral institutions were being built, America was full of this exceptionalist thought process. They assumed that there is something called American exceptionalism. We are here as saviors of the mankind. We are here to guide the entire world. That was the dominant thought process at that time. In fact, they used that as an excuse to intervene in the matters of many countries. In fact, why the entire Europe got divided into Western Europe and Eastern Europe was precisely for this reason. That on one hand was this American exceptionalism. They wanted their thought process to be imposed on entire Europe, and the Soviets under Stalin thought that no, we have to prevent it. We should not allow them on our doorstep. Interestingly, it is the same battle in another form which is being fought in Ukraine. Whether NATO should come right up to the doorstep of Russia or not is the whole battle. So this whole exceptionalism has been a main driving force for the Americans in the past. Today, the world has changed. Several people realize that it is no longer the world driven by any dominant power, or at least one or two powers. It's a multipolar world, but unfortunately, many in America are still not ready to accept that reality. They still feel that whatever may be the case, America will have to remain the dominant power in the world. We are not anti-America. America has given so many great values to the world, especially values like liberal values like freedoms, rights, and all those things were a great contribution of the Western world to humanity. While we respect that, at the same time, today, America has to realize that there are limitations to its own influence. It is itself seeing it everywhere. Yet, not everybody is willing to accept it. We all wish that America's benign influence should continue on the world, but America should understand that there are many other countries which also have very important contribution to make towards the betterment of our human life.
My last question, Ram Madhavji. We were just saying that India's journey to 10 trillion is going to be tough. It's not going to be an easy journey. There will be many roadblocks. Many people will want to stop India from going to that point, and so on and so forth. In your opinion, what is the biggest roadblock that we might face? Is it China? Is it, America's difficult transition? Is it climate change? What is the biggest roadblock do you see in this journey, and what can India do to counter it?
Global situation being certainly a factor in India's rise, I would say there are certain internal issues that we have to resolve for us to really progress faster and try to achieve that bigger goal. I would probably identify, I'm not dismissing the other external factors. They will be there. Any scenario, they will be there. We grew to a $4 trillion economy in spite of all of them. So from 4 to 10, if you have to grow, you have to now have certain important internal, a thought process, I would say, rather than giving any direct suggestion. I would say, first of all, we have to give up our romanticism. It's not about you becoming 4 to 3 or 3 to 2. It's about how you reach that level of prosperity where every Indian can have a better life standard. Now, India is a very big country, 1.4 billion people. And because if you have that kind of an aim, you have to be more pragmatic. In the sense that you have to understand where your economy is going to grow, where your bread is going to come from. We are still stuck in our old thinking. We have to go beyond that. Today, for example, take the case of manufacturing industry, which we think that it will create lots of jobs for India. Manufacturing industry is one industry which has the potential to create jobs. But manufacturing industry around India is saturated today. So you have a limited scope to grow. You have to go for high-end manufacturing. You have to go for defense manufacturing. You have to go for aerospace manufacturing. That brings me to the critical point that India's one of the biggest strengths is in deep tech area. Deep tech area can provide employment. It can create avenues for strong economic growth in India. Deep tech, when I say it includes AI, it includes quantum, it includes genetics, it includes space, it includes aerospace and defense, crypto, you name it, robotics. So in all these areas, India, because of its strong IT, IT network or IT strengths it has a huge opportunity. But unfortunately, we are investing very little on deep tech R&D in India. Everything we are depending on other countries. We are producing excellent cars with the most modern AI-driven gadgets. But everything in that AI-driven gadget is imported from outside. We don't manufacture. What happens if tomorrow some embargo comes? So India has to reprioritize in all these areas, focus on R&D, develop R&D in deep tech. That's the reason why Prime Minister Modi's government has announced 1 lakh crore for R&D into these deep tech areas. We have to go in that direction. I will also add one more suggestion. For India to grow as a $10 trillion economy, it's not just center alone which should be the lifting, doing the heavy lifting. It has to be the corporates of our country. Unfortunately, our corporates are not opening up their purses sufficiently. They have to now invest heavily. And I would say our state governments have to now come forward in a big way. They have to be given all the support. So, union government, corporates of Indian investors and corporates and state governments, together we have to work hard for the country to go to that 10 trillion level. That is the only effective way for India to become a $10 trillion economy. External factors will remain. Understand those factors and reprioritize your economic strategy.
Madhavji, The New World Order, 21st Century Global Order and India, his new book. Thanks very much, Ram Madhavji, for your time. I really appreciate you taking off time to talking to us.
Thank you. Great pleasure.